My name is Lee Alexander, and I'm going to moderate today's webinar. Making customer insight a critical source for business growth, and it will help guide you through a process to increase sales with your current customer base. This is a series of webinars hosted by Priority Metrics Group in 2015. Please check out our website to view our webinar schedule for this year, which includes topics on our rapid innovation process, and that webinar is coming up in September. And the other one is how to create a unique business position. All that is available at www.pmgco.com under the Resources tab. The website is going to consist of a 40 to 45-minute presentation with time set aside at the end for any questions that you might have. During the presentation, you can type questions in the chat box, which is at the top of your screen if you're not in full screen mode, and should be on your screen at the top. If you have your mouse over the top of the screen, a drop-down menu will drop for you there. You can type questions there and submit those electronically, and we'll try to get to all the questions that we can at the end of the presentation. Charlie Marsh, part of Priority Metrics Group, in 1993. John and Trent perfecting this methodology and are going to share some of the key insights with you today. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Charlie.
Thank you, Lee. I'd like to go over the agenda real quickly. First, unfortunately, we have a 2-minute just to level set as to who we are and what we do. And there we're going to get into the meat of the presentation, which is traditional action versus what we call customer insight, which is much more expansive and really a result of our 20 years of customer insight and customer satisfaction work. John, to customer insight, the key components of what we measure and why we think it's important, and really what transitions from what we feel a metric to a real strategic tool, what we do to allow that to happen. And we'll get into ongoing measurement and then questions and answers at the end. To the point emphasized by Lee, if you have any questions, if you could wait to the end, we'll answer those. PMG3, and the purpose is really to identify and capture profitable growth for our clients. For a little over 20 years, we have been doing a lot of work in customer focus or customer insight, customer work, because I mean that was our initial product. We started 20 years ago in customer insight, and we've done hundreds and hundreds of customer insight projects. This is a result of a lot of years of looking at this and presenting to customers. We really feel that we have an approach that really, again, makes it strategic rather than just your typical metric. We are focused on B2B. 95% of our work is B2B space. We operate in all markets. We don't have any vertical specialty. We think this is an advantage because most projects are process related, and we just apply those processes in the market. So it really delivers an unbiased result. Partners have corporate marketing and strategy backgrounds, so we come from, so to speak, so we really have a good understanding of what the needs are, marketers and corporate strategy people like yourself. So we tailor our projects to give you that information. We are global scope, and see, we have a pretty impressive client list, which ranges from packaging, distribution. Again, we're not vertical specific, but we do have a very, very solid client list. Many of the companies that you see, we have conducted customer insight work for. So this is a presentation not only of our overall client list, but also our customer insight client list. First, satisfaction is what we call customer insight. And the real pieces that make this different. First, customer satisfaction. Traditional customer satisfaction usually delivers a single metric or one or two metrics that are kind of a single performance dimension. In the case of that, in many cases, you assess performance on a multitude of critical attributes. For example, we use a 7-point scale, so just to kind of continue with that, introduce performance metrics such as on-time delivery and ask the performance on a scale of 1 to 7, so that the customer will give a rating on each of those. That's fairly typical. In addition to performance, most traditional customer satisfaction also importance. So attribute, on-time delivery, they will ask importance of that attribute relative to satisfaction. So that's a typical traditional customer sat approach. And that was our foundation, but at the time it does have some limitations which we've expanded on those limitations and added to those. Hopefully we've developed a process that really changes it from a single metric to a more strategic approach. So it's a solid understanding of performance. Every performance score, knows average, so you can get a really good feel for how you're performing on critical attributes. Second, let's deliver a general understanding of the importance of each attribute. Again, it's a specific question that's asked. A little bit later on about some of the issues with stated importance, as we call that, but it does give you a good understanding or a decent understanding of the attribute importance. It's stations, traditional sat. Often there's no availability of normative data, which, say, for example, your average is a 5.4 on a 7-point scale. What does that mean? Is that bad? It's very, very difficult to figure out if you have no data to compare it to. Often differentiate drivers, and this is what I mentioned early on. In most cases, when you say important to somebody the importance of each attribute, everyone will rate it highly. Because for whatever reason, they don't want to lose it. But as an example, how important, if I ask the question, how important is on-time delivery, how important is product quality, how important is order lead time, everything up to the top of the 7-point scale. So it's very hard to differentiate importance. Not competition at all in most cases. Most of the traditional customer sat. Introduce Net Promoter Score, which probably most of you have heard of, that address loyalty and advocacy, but a lot of your traditional customer sat does not. And assessing year-over-year performance. So if you 5.4 rating, let's say year 1, when you reach 2, you see whether you improved or whether you're going on your score. So value there, but that's really what's restricted. That's really what it's designed, or how it's designed to assess performance. It's really year-over-year performance, either improvement or decrease in that score. Common action technique. It's very simple. It's real easy to get information. It's a single question. How it works for those of you who aren't familiar with it, score is essentially ask one question that recommend my company to someone else. And if you, on a scale of 1 to 10, if you're 6, you were a detractor, as in the red, see in the red. 1 and 8, you were neutral or passive. Or if the multiple, they take the, you can see on the bottom, they take the factors, and that gives you a score. Your passives are not included in the score. So it's one question, and you get a good feel for what your customers will promote you to another client, which in turn is a good measure of customer loyalty. The benefit. Single, simple format, one question, really administer, and it's really inexpensive to administer. It's a solid measure of loyalty, no doubt. In addition, we have industry normative data available. Typically, it's a fairly large industries like automotive, technology, so you can compare yourself to your own industry in terms of where you fall in terms of your Net Promoter Score. Limitation, there's no improvement priority listed, it's just a single metric on their information, and similarly restricted to year-over-year performance assessment. So are you improving, or are you essentially going backwards in your Net Promoter Score? And our approach is really based on 4 pillars, of which these circles that are traditional. We do want to look at performance on critical attributes. That's kind of the foundation of all customer sat. In addition, we believe is critical. However, we don't ask for importance. We derive importance, which will go to the benefits, what we feel derived importance gives you over traditional stated importance. We have a position, and we'll have to do that. Customer satisfaction and customer insight work. And we do believe C score, but we work that a little slightly differently, and you'll see how we do that. So the 4 pillars that we tend to look relative to making, to transitioning customer satisfaction to customer insight, which we feel is a much more powerful management tool and strategic tool. How we do there, that's really where it all begins. And I've highlighted here the kind of the pillars that these types of questions fulfill. Competitive position. Again, attributes that we use there on deliveries and shipment. We of a company, in this case it's Alpha on a scale of 1 to 7. You see, we also ask for a best alternate supplier. So they're at best alternate supplier on the same attribute and the same. What allows us to do is gain some insight into that competitive position. So we ask an overall satisfaction question, and with performance ratings and 5 our importance in the drivers of overall satisfaction, which we'll go into in more depth and more detail in the next section. And then, this is the Net Promoter Score question, essentially. We ask that on a 10-point scale because that does allow you to go back and pull that industry normative data from their score groups and how you do on a normative basis. So it gives us a score on advocacy, which we can then scores. We can again derive and understand the drivers of advocacy. So those, the 4 pillars that we feel are critical in any customer insight work. Relative to driving satisfaction and advocacy. And he'll get into the nuts and bolts of how we use this questionnaire and how we assess data that we gather from this questionnaire and deliver the final product.
I'm going to just walk through some of the results here. Charlie's shown you the basic outline or format of our questionnaire. That's how we collect the data. And so I'm going to some slides taken from a disguise but actual that we've done to interpret the results and use these strategic management tool. So 4 pillars is performance. And here in this chart is summary across all the attributes of performance by attribute. This is a 7-point scale. 1 is completely dissatisfied. 7 is completely satisfied. So the degree of satisfaction with each attribute. So Charlie, in the area of delivery. So we're at the relative level of satisfaction with on-time delivery and all of these other attributes. And you see here the overall average is a 5.43, and there's a low of 4.12. You see over towards the right-hand side under fair and competitive price. Also several attributes that are around 6-point score. So this, if you will, of we're doing well and we're not doing so well. And well, how do I interpret that? So if we that scale now on a horizontal axis here, and we're just showing you kind of a window, if you will, there from a 4.7 to 6.9, and our average is a 5.43. How do we do that? And using our proprietary normative database. And so surveys, projects that we've completed, and we know that on a 7-point scale, the average is going to be a 5.72, and we can get into the statistics behind that, but that is a valid measure of the average of the survey averages, and it does follow a normal distribution. We can also see percentile location, so we can compute actually what 5.43 is on the normative curve as a percentile. Be familiar with that, we can actually say you're in the, let's say, probably the 40th percentile, which means that 60% of businesses are going to score ahead of you and 40% would score lower than that 5.43. Very helpful mark. We can attribute as well. So that leads to keywords, which is importance. And we mentioned and discussed briefly, there are really ways to measure importance. One is stated importance, the other derived or calculated importance. And by this, what we mean is simply asking respondents how important is each attribute, how important delivery, how important is consistency of quality, etc. And so to answer those questions on a 5 to 10-point scale, whatever you used. Derive importance, and we've illustrated this with the graphic on the left side of your screen there. And what the concept of an R-squared or a correlation between a particular attribute, which in this case is on the horizontal axis, and dependent variable, in this case overall satisfaction, on the vertical axis. So you have points. In this case, we just have a very simple survey with 9 different people, and rated 3 on attribute, and they rated overall satisfaction a 3. Another one the attribute and a 4 satisfaction, etc. We can very simple analytic tools, an R-squared or a Pearson product moment correlation between variables. That is telling us what is the strength of the relationship between these two attributes. Now, this is causality, but it does correlation. So we know that in this case, this on-time delivery has a correlation with overall satisfaction. So we need to attribute ratings move together. A simple intuitive step to draw the conclusion that there's quality here. In other words, that if I'm better on-time delivery, I'm probably better on my overall satisfaction. As a attribute with a low R-square correlation, where there's very little relationship between those, which would suggest that if I make a change in performance on that attribute, it's not much of an impact on overall satisfaction or whatever my dependent variable would be. There are two that we see using derived versus stated importance. Is that you more honest assessment of importance by using derived versus stated. Because when you ask someone to state importance, all the importance ratings tend to be towards the top scale. And based there on the part of the respondent is, if I do not rate attribute high, then there's a likelihood that it's going to be removed. If I don't think it is important, for example, then is going to shift resources away from their delivery efforts, and I see the same level of performance on-time delivery. Technical service is high, I'm going to put my tech service rep. So if importance is derived, there does tend to be a greater separation between attributes. And what we mean by that is you'll see distinction between those that are less important and those that are more important. Both derived and importance, and it's not all in a stated importance. Let's use a 10-point scale to select attributes with importance ratings between like an 8.5 and a 9.5. However, we derive importance, again, the same 10-point scale wouldn't be able to see derived importance, let's say between like a 3 and a 9. When we do the derivation, when we get this correlation where we can use a variety of dependent variables, it doesn't have to be overall satisfaction. We can correlate that to value, which is a very interesting analysis because now we're thinking what level or what attributes are driving higher in the perceived value of our customers. Attributes such as willingness to recommend as a dependent variable, and we'll show you how we interpret that just a little bit later in our webinar afternoon. But one of the questionnaires is much shorter. The reason, if we ask importance, we ask 2 questions on every attribute. We ask for a rating, and then we ask for an importance indicator. If we eliminate one series of questions. So now we're only asking performance. We never ask importance. So we have effort good data on performance and not seeing the fatigue factor that may come to bear if we double the number of questions. That Charlie mentioned, performance and importance is competitive position. And the way we call the layout that Charlie showed you just a few minutes ago, we ask for performance of the, in this case, alpha, and we to also rate performance on each attribute with best alternate supplier. And we the alternate supplier is the alternate to the primary supplier, in this case alpha, for so here is a chart of net score, that is alpha of that best alternate supplier. The best really does not exist because this composite of all that are mentioned by all of the respondents. In this case, you see in the upper left-hand corner, it's 117 individuals that provide of alpha and their best alternate supplier. So we have data points with a number of different alternate suppliers, all of whom are best for the individual respondents. So getting a higher threshold or a higher benchmark, we can measure alpha's performance. We versus one of their competitors, let's say Beta, but that has this best alternate supplier, which includes all how you ask for the of each best alternate supplier. So we can break that out, and that's what we're looking at here on this slide. We're actually looking at the results. You'll notice that the N has dropped from 117 to 31. So we're looking now of alpha's performance versus beta. So this head versus competitor, and 31 ratings are only of beta. So we a competitive position map, if you will, and we can understand exactly where alpha ahead of beta in the blue bars going to the right, and where behind beta the red bars going to the left. This is kind of a quick little story here. Much better price. See that behind on price, but there are attributes, the supply, right, of delivery and customer service, attributes in product quality, etc. So that's what's keeping them in the game. You know, there are attributes where alpha is behind, not only on price, but several other attributes, and that really examine carefully, because if we go all the way to the bottom, those last two attributes, not only behind on price, we're also behind on perceived value and overall satisfaction. So alpha is pretty strong at aggregate level. When performance just versus beta, those are telling us I'm getting a deal for beta, and doing some things well, I'm really satisfied with what beta is providing me. So accounts, we would say, are really, the relationship's a little tenuous, and we got to be very careful, or may position to beta, or we may lose some customer share at these accounts. Here's where it really starts to get interesting, is we can combine some of these to get, you know, even further insight. What we've done is combined importance on the vertical axis and competitive position, or what we call the net score, on the horizontal axis. And all attributes, all the boxes, let's just ignore for a moment the color of those boxes that are positioned on this map for competitive position and of importance. So we see the top center of the map, product consistency. So the difference of alpha on product consistency is slightly behind competition, but it's the most important attribute that alpha customers are looking for. It's a priority for us in terms of developing some type of an improvement plan. Is also a little bit behind competition. Again, important. So we have attributes that are circled in that upper left-hand quadrant, and all these 25 or so attributes, those ones where we probably would want to invest our first efforts at improving our performance. It's important to our customers and behind what they're getting from competition. Now, this lower right-hand quadrant, we take because they're performing very well. We're beating the socks off competition. We're way ahead of competition, but it's just not that important. So, like responsiveness of our technical service, or competency of our technical service, that's the TS there. Scheme of things bring superior performance in those areas, but really not as important to me as some other issues such as security of supply, product consistency, product portfolio, etc. Consider here, one is, are we delivering on attributes that are just not that important, or are we ticket punched? You can recognize the value of the technical service that we're providing. So, now, if you know a shaded area running from the lower left to the upper right, and in a perfectly resourced company, we're probably attributes kind of along that line somewhere. In other words, a little bit behind competition, a little bit ahead of this best alternate supplier, but we want to do better on the things that matter most to customers. So we have attributes in that blue area or someplace close to it. And just if we look at the attributes in the bottom left there, return of packaging material, we're well on that. Is that an area where we'd want to work for improvements? Probably there are priorities. And so through, look at all the other attributes. So that's why we've circled these attributes on the upper left and the lower right. That's really where more strategic interest is generated in this type of an improvement map. So now this leg or critical measure. And then, so we're looking at the correlation now between attributes and the Net Promoter Score. Companies use Net Promoter Score, but one of the advantages is we have a managerial response to the Net Promoter Score. We get a score of 73 or 32, which is, but unless we start tracking that over time and improvement or decreases, but even we don't know what's causing that. So we see a stepwise increase over 3, 4, 5 years of tracking Net Promoter Score, but what's driving it? What are we doing that's increasing that? So we correlated and said, okay, what is driving our performance on Net Promoter Score? And the attributes are listed on the right-hand side here. Number 1, meeting your quality needs. Number 2, product consistency. And actually plot those now versus competitive position. And we've identified the 3 drivers of advocacy. So that meeting needs, product consistency, and security of supply are the things that are driving Net Score. Supply, positive word of mouth, meeting consistency, saying that we're as well as Beta or other competitors. So priorities now in terms of driving positive word of mouth and creating advocacy that's going to lead to future business. We found that the top 3, 5 attributes in that we do like this are going to account for 9 or more of impact that attributes will have on overall advocacy or Net Promoter Score. So we're going to use top 3. What we want to show is how you can now take this and track this over time. And to do this, one we call customer insight. That's what we've been talking about in this webinar. The point is good for or situations where there are relatively few customers or locations, where, in other words, it's not going through distribution, the market, and not technology involved. So we can do this on an annual basis or even, every 2 years. Customer Insight 360, and this is an ongoing survey, really moving closer to real time. And instances where there may be many customers, we're moving through distribution, the market dynamic, and or there's technology change, where it's to be a continuous kind of finger on the pulse to really track and monitor in the marketplace and with customers. We have a dashboard, and we would encourage you, if you're doing something like this or have thought about doing something like this, to look at developing or contracting with someone to do type of a tool where you can track these things really at your world at any time, so you can see exactly what your performance is, if not actually real-time basis. And home page with key performance measures, and then can be customized to allow you to look at results by sales territory, by division or SBU, per market segment, etc. And they're all used to process to certain pieces of data only to certain users. And this is a fairly accessible kind of product. It does not offer this. You may want to look for somebody that could either submit or provide this for you, because many of our found this to be a very valuable service or addition to their Insight offering. And then we want a quick example of important, whether you're talking about point-in-time or real-time data, this information on a basis. And if we look at the company we've been talking about for our webinar here, we actually did more than that, but we're just looking at 2 studies here in year 3. And we're showing competitive position, or the net score, in both left-hand side in year 1, and you see that almost every blue are ahead of competition. The left is price. When we move later, whole different story. Now, Alpha is in a position where there's actually a lot more red ink on that chart than there is blue. And that Alpha's performance had slipped. Their performance was relatively stable, but the performance had increased dramatically. So they have strong, viable competitors. By 3, there were numerous strong competitors that were to make inroads into their into product, into their, and specific map, you see exactly what was going on. So that we've circled here, the one in green is sales, in this case sales effectiveness, and then a quality attributes. This is year 1. And year 3, sales and product quality had shifted dramatically, dropping in importance and more towards a lower performance. Increasing in importance, shifting to a lower relative performance. And what was place, and what was by this analysis was which has shifted from a differentiated product position to more of a position. In other words, more important, sales and that personal touch became less important. The product, they're not buying the individual or the summary. And again, I understand we're moving quickly, but we want to respect your time here. If just summarize for you, what is measured and why is that of strategic benefit? So, first of our 4 pillars, it's customer evaluation of performance, and we use the word honest because third party, we're getting active performance measurements. We've seen that have used salespeople to conduct satisfaction surveys, tend to be very biased because they're being administered by the sales force. In other words, a customer is not to tell a salesperson that they're satisfied with any aspect of performance, activity, or more honest evaluations. This is easy to keep a finger on the pulse, just as we showed with Alpha in that year 1 to 3 change. Our second is what really matters to customers. Not what they tell us, but what really matters. And strategically is it helps us to prioritize initiative investments. So we know that we're putting dollars in the areas that matter the most, where we're going to have the biggest impact and most immediate impact on the overall relationship, satisfaction, or value of our customers. But we are a competitive position. If we based on performance and importance, we may miss what's going on with competition. So we have performing versus competition because that helps us to develop a path to achieve long-term competitive advantage, which is really the core of business strategy. And then our last, advocacy, what we're measuring of customers to promote our business. And strategically is because that gives us an assessment of our organic growth potential. What we customers are advocating for us, they're likely to buy. This is the problem of our sales force going out and getting new customers, but old customers leaving through the back door, and we get this turnstile effect of where we've got sales effort, but we're not going. If we have advocacy, we can understand if we're in fact really achieving the level of organic growth that we need to have a stable, long, valuable business. So that gets us through the presentation. And what we want to do now, I'm going to turn it back over to Lee, and we can address any questions that might have come up.
All right, guys. Check for any questions that you guys might have. I'm gonna just jump right into these real quickly. First off, how is the data normally collected?
Yeah, normally we indicate a multiple data methodology. Everyone has their preference, or different kind of structures require different data collection methodology. It's important when you have a small sample size to get a high response rate. So to offer telling email or email responses, and we'll collect data through all of those methods, and the flexibility and the company choose the most appropriate for them.
Develop the attribute list.
Well, for 20 years, we have a long list of different attributes in different categories. But we really sit down with a customer, under what they feel drives their product in terms of the attributes. We compare this to ours. Because some advantage on using some of the attributes we have, because as John mentioned, we can include normative data to see attribute specific basis on how they compare to normative data. But it's really a combination of what we have internally, what we used in the past, and what our customer feels are the best attributes that drive their product.
Response rate.
In a where we have only say key customers or strategic customers, we target a 70% response rate. And the reason for that is because that gives us a statistically valid sample. Now, if we also have smaller or less strategic or let's say type counts, or some companies use ABC type classifications, with the important accounts, we will not put the same effort in data collection. This is strictly a cost exercise. With those small accounts, and with that less intense data collection effort, we'll typically response rates in the 30 to 40%. But with larger and more important accounts and with key customers, we all and have been successful in achieving 90% response rate.
And our last important methodology.
Done that. In most cases, we use both. Would like to have stated importance and understand what the stated importance is for the customer. We can caution that add an appreciable amount of time to the questionnaire. So certain things you may have to give up, and possibly the attributes or the number of additional questions that you might ask. But there is value in it, and because you can look at both and compare them both, and it does have some potential things that you can the data on the back end if you assess. But if one we like derived, if you want to use two, that's fine. But there is a downside relative to the length of the questionnaire.
That's all now. I know that was a lot to take in. If it has any additional questions that we didn't get answered or maybe you haven't even thought of yet, John and Charlie have contact information, which is on the screen. They'd be more happy to address any further questions regarding today's presentation or market research and PMG's capabilities. Please don't hesitate to call or shoot them an email. We'd like to thank you all for your participation in today's webinar on Customer Insight. As a reminder, there will be a recording on the PMG website. Again, that is www.pmgc.com, and you will find that information and all the resources tab at the top of the screen. Again, for your interest in today's topic, and that will conclude our presentation.